Welcome to Marketing Brew Weekly, the show where we chat about everything that's, well, surprising and delighting the marketing world this week. I'm Jenny Mywin, reporter at Marketing Brew.
I'm Kelsey Sutton, editor.
And I'm Katie Hicks, senior reporter.
Today, we've got some thoughts on the Super Bowl halftime performer, a big Netflix brand deal, and, of course, the TikTok sale. Ready? Let's do it!
So let's start with a little vibe check here. Meta announced that they have a new product called Vibes. It's in the Meta AI app, and it's going to be a feed specifically for AI-generated videos. What do you guys think about this?
Literally, who asked for this? That's my first thought.
The vibe is not good.
Bad vibes.
The vibe is not good.
Yeah.
I said this before the show, and I'll say it again on the show, but if you have not taken the energy to make something, why should I take the energy to watch something? And that's sort of how I feel about this sort of thing. Maybe there are people who are very invested in seeing AI-produced content. I don't think I'm one of them.
I don't think it's something that people seek out. Personally, I actually was talking to a couple of friends who were talking about their crazy TikTok feeds or whatever, the craziest things that come up. And I do have a couple of friends that actually admitted to loving AI generated content, but kind of in a shameful way. They're when it comes up, I am really engrossed by the crazy content, but they're not really seeking it out. So I'm curious, this is a specific feed on a specific app. Who is going to download it to be yes, I want AI content?
I mean, OpenAI also just announced that they're going to do a similar thing. It's going to be a very TikTok-looking video app where it's all AI-generated videos too. Yeah, my question is, because I feel like I'm in a similar boat where I don't seek this out. It does kind of show up on my Explore page on Instagram every now and then. It'll be a cat grocery shopping or something insane.
I do want to see that.
Kelsey's never mind, I'm in.
Actually, I love it.
But if we're to believe that the people who are liking Lobster Jesus memes on Facebook, have you guys seen that? The AI slop content are to engage with this kind of content. Can we expect them to download a completely new app and engage with it? Do they have that tech savvy?
Yeah, well, and I think the thing too for a lot of these platforms is ultimately what they want endless supply of content so that people can engage, they can put ads in between them, etc. But again, the question is, are people going to flock to that, or is it going to just be training other AI models?
Right.
And then it's sort of who's watching any of this?
We're just sad at the type of content that we're getting at that point.
Maybe I'm overestimating. Maybe people really do want to see those cats shopping at the grocery store.
I mean, they almost got you immediately there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious to see how Vibes rolls out because Meta's had a few hiccups with some of their AI rollouts recently. We saw this at the Meta Connect event. For anybody watching, take a look at this video.
Steak sauce using soy sauce, sesame oil.
What do I do first? What do I do first?
You've already combined the base ingredients, so now grate a pear to add to the sauce.
What do I do first?
You've already combined the base ingredients, so now grate the pear and gently combine it with the base sauce.
All right, I think the Wi-Fi might be messed up. Sorry, back to you, Mark. It's all good.
If you want to watch that video, it's in the show notes. But yeah, that clearly was not a very clean rollout of that AI product. So
right, and
we'll
I feel
see
like
what Vibes says.
Meta kind of has a little bit of a history of copying things or jumping on things and rolling things out that no one really asked for. And then this event where they rolled it out and it wasn't quite even ready.
Are we thinking about the metaverse? Maybe.
Yeah, perhaps the famous metaverse.
I don't know.
So we'll see where the AI.
We'll see how good the vibes are.
Yeah, love that. Well, before we get into the next topic, we have to take a moment and talk about the sponsor of today's episode, Digicom.
Digicom is a digital marketing agency. They've worked with e-commerce brands like Mind Body Green. They've worked with Ever Eden. They've worked with David's Toothpaste. And they use scientific creative testing and multi-channel executions to get 10 times level breakthroughs on platforms like Meta and Google, TikTok, Outbrain, Taboola, you name it.
So what does Digicom do? They plug into a brand's head of growth and handle things like budgeting and planning and can do creative production for paid ads using your brand's assets. They can even do media buying. But first, they conduct an audit map to map the metrics that matter for a brand, whether that's hook rate, watch time, click-through rate, conversion, or revenue.
for Marketing Brew listeners, that's you, that's all of you who are listening, Digicom is offering a free, no BS paid media audit. So what they'll do is they'll spend 10 plus hours diving into Meta and Google. They'll do creative testing, and then they'll look for ways to optimize your conversion rate, and then they'll give you a 90-day action plan.
If you want to get your brand's free paid media audit, go to digicom.io/brew. That's digicom.io/brew. Okay, guys, earlier this week, the Super Bowl halftime performer was announced, and I wish I had a drum so I could do a drum roll. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was Bad Bunny, which I feel like is a really big deal for obviously his fans, but it's an interesting choice overall. What was your guys' reaction when you heard about it?
It seemed like such a, like, I had heard inklings it was going to be like Taylor Swift or some of these other like pop names. Adele was floated, and I feel like when Bad Bunny was announced, I was like, that makes so much sense. Like, I hadn't even thought of him, but I'm like, that fits.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he's coming off of like kind of a big time in his career. He's had a massive career in general, but he just wrapped up this big residency in Puerto Rico, which actually generated hundreds of millions of dollars in tourist revenue for Puerto Rico itself, which is awesome. And he's also obviously had this like massive impact on culture and Latin music in particular. So I kind of want to talk about like why Bad Bunny is such a big decision for the Super Bowl itself. Like, what is he bringing to the Super Bowl's brand? He is the most streamed artist on Spotify from 2020 to 2022, which is like a record, I believe. Like, no one has gotten that title 3 years in a row, which is pretty crazy. 11.5 billion streams by 2024. So just what a massive
Huge
artist.
audience.
Yeah. I think something that has always kind of existed is that the NFL has this big audience base, this big devoted fan base. And when you think of like who is watching an NFL game, who's watching the Super Bowl, I think of my dad and all my dad's friends. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that that is something that the NFL has really consistently tried to change in the past year. And something that NPR actually reported at the end of 2024 is that Latino viewers are becoming the fastest growing demographic of the NFL fans. So that is something that I feel like this indicates leaning into, nodding that there's this very huge growing fan base that, again, kind of changes what you think of when you think of who's watching the Super Bowl. I feel like we had kind of similar conversations when the NFL really leaned into the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce connection. This season we've seen there have been a bunch of apparel partnerships. Obviously, Travis Kelce has an apparel line, so that's one of them. But Abercrombie & Fitch also made a big deal with the NFL so that they could put out co-branded apparel for fans, and that I think is, again, kind of contributing to changing the people who are actually watching and who the NFL is wanting to kind of court. They have their established fan base, people who maybe, watched, are like my dad, like 65 years old, have been watching the football for a long time, but there's like newer, younger, more diverse audiences that they want to attract and continue to attract and court in this way. And I feel like the Bad Bunny choice, obviously he's incredibly popular among lots of demographics, but I think that this kind of nods at why it's so important is because that is such a huge fan base that's coming to NFL games.
Yeah, they really are broadening their reach. I feel like in addition to all of that too, they're also doing like international games this year. So I feel like they're really just reaching more women, more diverse audiences, worldwide audiences. And this feels like that's definitely part of that strategy.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about because I feel like obviously the Super Bowl is a huge marketing moment. We all know that. Doesn't need to be said. But it is known for having such a large audience that it's still like seeking to grow, and it's still finding these areas and these pockets where it's like, oh, we can serve a more diverse audience, whether that's ethnically diverse, racially diverse, women, like bringing in all these people who might be interested in the entertainment experience for the first time, which obviously is super attractive to advertisers as well. But I feel like the Super Bowl is also a massive deal for the performer that gets it. They obviously are getting this huge platform to promote their own personal brand on, let alone any brands that they are perhaps partnered with. I did a quick look back at last year's performance with Kendrick, which was the most watched performance in history at 133.5 million viewers, and it typically averages over 100 million. So So that is a lot of people that will maybe be tuning in specifically because of Bad Bunny, or maybe being exposed to Bad Bunny for the first time ever. So he is getting this like big opportunity to kind of introduce himself to a bunch of people that might not be familiar with him as well.
I mean, he's also a huge brand ambassador for brands like Calvin Klein, and I know there are a few others too, Gucci, Adidas, Mercedes. You know, these are brands that he could potentially showcase while he's up on stage. We saw this with Rihanna with her Fenty makeup, like opening up her little compact. So,
Iconic.
I mean, even last year with Kendrick Lamar, he was like wearing the bootcut jeans that went viral.
Yeah.
I don't think that was intentionally a marketing moment, but it became
happened,
one.
yeah.
You know, you could wear one little thing and it could go viral. Like maybe we'll see Bad Bunny's little colorful shorts become a nice little marketing moment for whatever brand he wears.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring up the Kendrick example, because I think that one in particular is so interesting, because that wasn't an official partnership as far as I'm aware of. Like, he was wearing jeans from Celine, and afterwards they like sold out immediately. They're very expensive jeans. They're a designer brand, but like it wasn't necessarily a planned marketing moment, and it still had such a big reaction to it.
Right, it's such a cultural touchstone, like the
Yeah.
halftime show in particular, right? I remember a couple years ago when the Rihanna halftime show was on, I was not particularly invested in either team. I went to a bar, was watching it with some friends, and the bar literally muted the game. And then when the halftime show, so I was kind of keeping an eye on it with one eye, and then the halftime show came on, and they literally made an announcement. They were like, the game is on, everyone be quiet. And they turned the volume on full volume so we could watch the halftime show. And I feel like there's a lot of people that engage with the Super Bowl in that way, right? It is this cultural moment. It's going to have cultural conversation. And I feel like this is going to be an interesting one too for the brands that are buying the Super Bowl, already have Super Bowl plans in the works. Bad Bunny is not a person to shy away from making political statements, from being kind of vocal. And I kind of feel like we saw that a little bit with Kendrick Lamar too. Does that just make it more of a cultural moment, more of a must tune in sort of thing? And what might happen, you know, kind of as a ripple effect of that, those 5 minutes on the stage.
Yeah.
I think, that feels like an obvious reason why Bad Bunny probably chose this moment to participate. I mean, he's previously said he doesn't feel comfortable hosting concerts in the U.S. just because of the immigration issues happening right now. So to take this opportunity to reach a huge, huge audience of Americans and potentially make a statement, I feel like that's going to be a big opportunity for him.
Yeah, well, but like famously, brands don't love to get involved in anything politically charged. But it's interesting because, yeah, like Kendrick's performance last year did have a political message to it ultimately. And it didn't feel like brands shied away from working with him after that. It only, like, because it is such a large cultural moment, his star only rose even more than it already is. And I feel like he was like really in the spotlight for a while after that performance as well, and was still working with brands. I think he got a Chanel ambassadorship like pretty soon after that. So like massive brands. Like
also his DJ too, like the Heinz mustard collab.
Yes.
Like there was
Oh
a
my
lot of
gosh,
like
yes.
a lot of like stuff that came out, like ripple effect beyond just Kendrick from that performance.
Yeah. The other like partnership that I'm kind of keeping an eye on is, so Bad Bunny just wrapped this residency in Puerto Rico, which ended with a live stream put on by Amazon Music, which was free and like hugely watched, broke a bunch of records. But the halftime show for the last couple of years has been sponsored by Apple Music, which I feel like there's a little bit of competition right there. So I imagine he won't be promoting Amazon Music, but I think that event was the start of a long partnership coming up. So an interesting little clash there that could be something to keep an eye on.
A little tidbit, yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that Apple Music is talking about how they're going to capitalize on this, you know, offering a free month, or trying to convince people to get involved and listen to Bad Bunny on their platform and not on the other platforms they might be listening on.
Yeah, totally. Well, we can only hope that he doesn't hurt his knee or something on stage, because look at his little hop. Look at him. He was just trying his best.
I think he's recovered since then, but yeah, maybe no jumping.
Yeah, get in good shape for this big performance for him.
Have you guys read anything about this Netflix AB InBev huge advertising deal that just dropped?
Massive. Yeah, it's the biggest global co-marketing brand partnership ever, right? Between these two brands.
So AB InBev and Netflix struck up a global brand partnership deal. So what this kind of looks like practically is that AB InBev owned brands, so that's Budweiser, Stella Artois, Corona, etc. They're going to be presenting sponsors on some of Netflix's buzziest shows. But I think really importantly, the thing that is I'm really interested in is that there's going to be a lot of co-branded campaigns around Netflix's live events. Netflix has been pushing into live programming, live sports in particular, but not exclusively live sports, really heavily, because I think that's where we see a ton of advertiser interest and a ton of audience attention. When you have huge, huge audiences descending on a platform all at once to watch something like the Super Bowl. So Netflix has boxing matches coming up. It has an NFL Christmas Day games lineup, and then it also the upcoming Women's World Cup. So this is going to really help, I think, Netflix distinguish itself by being able to do some of these big promotional campaigns with the support of a humongous company like AB InBev. What do you guys think about this? What do you think it tells us about sort of the state of streaming and streaming advertising?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a big part of this is that AB InBev is such a global brand as well, right? And Netflix has this global reach. They have this like ad-supported tier in like many, many countries. I think it's 12 countries at this point. So it's just the fact that both brands are so global in nature, I feel like is opening up this type of way that they're working together that might not have been possible, especially for streamers in the past. But yeah, and then they have this like additional appeal of live events, of appointment viewing. I feel like that's just so talked about right now in TV ads, and that's not necessarily something that a streamer can provide. But getting in on those live sporting events is only going to be more appealing.
Yeah, and I feel like they're intentionally trying to reach an international audience too, because it seems like the shows that they're choosing to promote with this deal is like Squid Games and The Gentleman, which is out of the UK, and there were some other, more international titles that they were including in this. So it does feel like they're really trying to like reach a huge audience.
I think it really indicates something kind of interesting that's happening in the streaming space. So obviously in the world of live in particular, we've seen so much, such a dominance from these, I think of they're global companies, but in the US particularly, Disney, NBC Universal, Fox, like have owned TV live sports rights for a really long time. And we've seen these streamers, not just Netflix, but Amazon Prime Video, Apple, TV Plus, trying to get involved in this space. And it's very, very competitive. I think the thing that really stands out to me is that Netflix is saying we don't necessarily have to be like that. Like we have the rights to this. We have the global rights to this. So we can strike a huge deal with a global advertiser that wants to have broad brand appeal very, very, in a humongous sort of way. And a lot of the way that like traditional media rights kind of work is it's like you have the rights to stream it in English here in this space. It's kind of limiting. And so I think this kind of tells us a little bit about how Netflix is thinking about its ambitions is like bigger and bigger and bigger. I think what that does also do is, there's only a select few type of companies that are positioned to actually take advantage of that, like Unilevers of the world, AB InBev, companies that have huge global portfolios that are, an international brand, has to be there. So I think that that's kind of an interesting, just challenge, I guess, too, as they grow, is they have to find the right kind of partners that are actually going to want the scale that they're offering. But advertisers always want scale.
Right. But I feel like for those global advertisers, it's got to be so exciting. It's like, I imagine the process of putting together global campaigns just got so streamlined by being able to be like, okay, we want to target these countries. Netflix has access to all of them. Like we can just look at Netflix's catalog, like what live events they have coming up, what shows, what might we align with? Because that's the other piece of this that I think is interesting, that it's not just like presenting title sponsors of live events and shows, but there's also going to be some like brand integrations into shows where it makes sense, which I feel like is increasingly common and popular. We literally just talked about The Summer I Turned Pretty recently, but oh my God, when I was watching that show, was I clocking like, oh, there's a brand, there's Michaels, there's the the champagne brand that I can't pronounce, so I'm not gonna try. Like,
Oh, she's only carrying Coach bags, and then look, the commercial breaks a Coach ad. Huh?
right, crazy. So it is like happening even outside of the Netflix space. So it's interesting that this will be another avenue for that to happen. And I'm curious how consumers will also react to that.
Like how in your face is it going to be? Are we going to see like every character in like a show chugging a Corona? Like it's going to get to the point where you're like, I can tell this is sponsored. Because we saw it with the Barbie movie too. Like there was that whole segment in the middle of the movie where it was like a car chase scene. Everyone's like, this is a Ford commercial or a Chevy commercial, whatever it was.
They were like, wow, it's so fast.
Yeah.
Okay, unfortunately, I did love that scene. The Charlie XCX song playing in the background. I was having a good time.
Yes, I feel like you got to be subtle about it, especially given the scale of this deal. Like you have to make sure you're not going too hard because people will notice and turn off.
Yeah, I think something that's so interesting. So first of all, like what Netflix does, the rest of the streaming world will also do. So it's kind of only a matter of time. I feel like there's always this sort of replication. Like we have this also. Very famous example, Hulu rolled out pause ads. That was very exciting at the time. Now they're everywhere. You know, nobody remembers it was Hulu that did it first, except for me, I guess. But like,
Kelsey's keeping tabs.
and Hulu probably.
Yeah.
So, but you know, so I think that the way that this might be structured could be something that other companies look to try to replicate. The question is, can they replicate it with the deals that they have in place and the structures that they have in place? Is that actually feasible with the rights that they currently have? And it might be that Netflix kind of owns that space for a little bit, and then some of these streamers and some of these more traditional media companies start to look at their deals and the structures of them just in terms of media rights across borders and go, maybe we need to make some adjustments so that we can offer something of this scale. But something I think is also really interesting is that I think a lot of the streaming advertising space has really been focused on we can be super precise. Like we know exactly who's watching. We have your email address. We can target very closely. And this is like, no, we're going to target everyone.
Yeah, it's like we're going global, baby.
And I think that scale is something that is just still very attractive to certain big brands. And streamers are trying to say, look, we can do both.
Yeah.
We can do that targeted work, but we can also do big global brand campaigns. Also, Netflix gets the bonus of they get support in actually promoting their shows and movies.
Yeah.
And that is like a huge part of this deal, I think, that we can't underestimate because I feel like people talk about that sometimes. They're like, there's a show on Netflix. I've never seen a single ad for it. I don't know anybody who's watching this. When did this come out? And you hear that on a lot of streamers, right? Like people are like, how did this show get made? And I never saw any sort of advertising for it. It's because advertising is really expensive. And when you're making 500 shows a day, like,
Literally,
you can't
feels like
advertise all of them.
Churning it out.
So, but if you have a big brand or a big company that has lots of brands underneath of it, you're going to look for all of those ways to, to cross promote, and that is going to help. Maybe I think Netflix's hope is that will help lift the Netflix brand and get people really invested in some of their shows, and also maybe drink a Corona while they're watching it.
Yeah, a nice little beverage while you're watching your favorite show. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd love to see if like some of these brands do look to partner with smaller shows that have like niche audiences and really dedicated fan bases sometimes. But I imagine at the beginning they'll want to get in on the Squid Game of the world, on the Bridgertons of the world, the ones that obviously have the most eyeballs, which is a big appeal of working with Netflix in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've talked long form content. Now I think we should talk about the latest short form drama, which is really, Katie, your purview.
It's the TikTok sale again, but it's kind of looking like the sale might be happening. There have been 4 executive orders delaying the implementation of the divest or ban bill. And now, as of last week, President Trump signed an executive order basically commanding that this sale go through to a group of American investors or U.S. investors. They're not all from the U.S. But yeah, so basically it's not a done deal yet. It looks like it is. People have been talking about it as if it is, but there still needs to be some regulatory approvals that come from the U.S. government, from the Chinese government, before it really goes into effect. But
I feel like that's like a big thing to emphasize is because if you're just like reading headlines and you're just getting like daily news, it really sounds like it's a done deal. Like he signed an executive order.
It's happening.
The sale is happening. But yeah, you peel back the layers and it's like there's a lot here that still needs to be worked out.
And there's a lot that we don't know either. Like there's a lot of stuff happening within the terms of the deals that are just not super clear yet.
Yeah, I think something that we have learned about this administration is an executive order does not mean that something is going to happen. And I think this is the case here where it's sort of a stop and go, okay, what has to happen? So what does have to happen? We have to have approval from
the governments.
Yes.
But in the meantime, what we know so far about the deal is that they would split up U.S. operations into its own company, overseen 80% by American investors, 20% by ByteDance. Basically what they would do is they'd split the responsibilities into two. So TikTok US would oversee the algorithm, which is going to be leased by ByteDance to the American investor company. And then the advertising and e-commerce side will remain in China underneath ByteDance. I don't really know how that's going to like overlap with each other. It's a question marketers, I'm sure, are asking, wondering how would an ad campaign in the US even look? Also, TikTok Shop is included with that too. So TikTok Shop will remain under ByteDance in China.
So if you're a retailer selling on TikTok Shop, that's like still operating in China. That just like to me feels like we're really extending the process of being an advertiser or a retailer on TikTok. It's like, okay, obviously if you're in the US, you have the US side, but like do you have to work with the China side to talk about anything that's going on with advertising and TikTok Shop? Does that then get routed back to the US side to then get back to you? There's a lot of question marks here.
A lot of question marks, but ultimately it looks like ByteDance is coming out on top in this deal. They're going to make about 50% of the profit and even though they're only owning like 20% of this new
Crazy.
US TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's looking good for them. It's looking confusing for us. It's still also not clear if we're going to have to download a new app or what the algorithm as leased by ByteDance to this American company is going to look like. Will it be skewed? Will it be very similar to how it used to be? We don't know.
Something I think about, and I am going to say this is purely speculation, but you know how if you try to get on Netflix, like in some like a country that's not the US, and it's like, sorry, this isn't available in this country. Like, I wonder if that's going to be like a VPN like workaround. Like if you open TikTok in certain, and it's, you know, connected to the US, you know, internet system, like that, then it says like, okay, now you get this type.
Yeah.
But if you're somewhere else, you get a different type, or you have two different apps depending on where you are.
Right. I would be
Lots
really
of questions.
curious if like the content is significantly different and like there is that desire from consumers to be like, I actually want the original TikTok that is now being fully operated in China, but yeah, I have to get a VPN to access it or something. Especially if they do move ahead with a separate app, I feel like that will cause so much friction, like to get the entire American audience to sign up for an entirely new app, even if it looks the same and it feels the same, which I believe is a promise of this potential new app.
Who knows, but I'm sure they want it to look as similar as possible. But yeah, there's certainly going to be drop off if you make people delete the current app and then download a new one. And people are going to lose all the content that they've saved on the old app, and maybe they just won't even want to start over again. Who knows?
Something that I think is going to be really interesting is whenever a company kind of changes ownership, we kind of have a very good example of this happening when Elon Musk bought Twitter and rebranded it to X. Like the user base changed, the advertiser base changed, the type of content available on the platform changed really significantly. And it didn't happen overnight. It kind of happened over a long a course of time as it kind of became apparent, like what is happening, who's using this app, who's not using this app, et cetera. But we have seen that example. And so I think that what is going to be really interesting is, does the U.S. consumer want this change? Like, are they interested in what a U.S.-only TikTok looks like? And then there's so many questions for the advertisers who spend big on this platform, right? And rely on it as a place to brand build, to show off their founders, to show off their products. And then, of course, all the businesses that sell on TikTok Shop, which is growing by the day, it feels like.
Yeah.
That is not an insignificant part of people's lives and livelihoods. So,
I think it's going to boil down to the user experience, because if users leave and creators leave and they don't like this new version of the app, then advertisers are going to follow them. So whether that's to Reels or to YouTube Shorts or to something else entirely, I think it's a matter of watching like where the market moves.
Yeah. Potentially a space for a new platform to pop up because we don't have enough platforms in our lives as is.
Maybe everyone will move to Vibes.
Oh, wow. Vibes. Bring her back. I thought you were going to say Vine for a second. And I was like, yes,
please.
bring back Vine. But
Simpler times.
not as great.
Simpler times indeed.
Seriously. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And if you want to tell us how you feel about Bad Bunny performing at the Super Bowl or anything else, send us an email at mkbw@morningbrew.com, which you can also find in the show notes. Thanks so much for being here, and make sure you come right back next week.